For joining us. Rohan is the co-founder of CheatLayer. CheatLayer lets you automate your business tasks using machine learning and no-code tools. CheatLayer has autonomous agents that can generate and upload videos, gather leads, build entire games, send personalized emails and LinkedIn messages. And also they have a phone agent automation. And in addition to their work with marketing automation, they've done significant research in agents that started before the ChatGPT API. They were likely they were the first to publish an agent solution in September 2022, which feels like a long time ago. And 3 weeks ago, they launched Atlas One, a new multimodal model that they've been training for over a year. Atlas One enables LLMs like GPT-4 Vision to perform precise actions and build robust, future-proof autonomous agents. Rohan, I'm excited to dive in and get started. So you mentioned that the CheatLayer team is remote. Where are you based?
Yeah, so I'm in New Hampshire. I've been digital nomading actually since around 2018 when I kind of retired, and that allowed me to have free time during the pandemic, and that's kind of how CheatLayer formed. But our team is globally. We have one in San Francisco, one in New York, one in the Philippines, and Portugal. We're kind of spaced out, yeah.
So that's quite a lot of different time zones between the Philippines and Portugal. Do you have regular meetings, or is it an asynchronous team, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have regular meetings, but since the teams are segmented into different sort of categories, I can meet with them at different times. That's okay. We have a regular Monday all hands that everyone is optional to attend to, but I recommend it. And then some users can't do it because it's out of their time zone. And then I meet with everyone with a daily stand-up anyway.
Fantastic. So I want to talk more about that Atlas One. You had this exciting launch a few weeks ago. And I know you'd mentioned semantic targets, which is something that is enabled with Atlas One that isn't possible with other solutions. You talk more a bit about that, or I understand that like semantic targets are identifying intent in language.
Yes, yeah. So this basically solves a big problem that breaks all other automation tools today, like UiPath, Microsoft, Automation Anywhere. There are RPA solutions and browser solutions and desktop solutions, but in the end, they all rely on something called targeting. And they use targets, and in the browser environment, their targets are usually something that involves some kind of code, like CSS selectors or XPath. And in the desktop environment, RPA solutions have used computer vision to solve some of these problems, but they're still brittle. And they break when these designs change in these services. And this is probably one of the biggest problems we've noticed with our customers. And we've had large enterprise customers like Infosys come to us, and like this is one of their biggest issues because their engineers have to rebuild the automation every time designs and services change. And so this kind of solves that problem we've noticed over the last few years building these automations with customers. It seems like the biggest problem to build robust future-proof automations and make agents actually generalized.
If you enjoy this, you should sign up to our free newsletter, 3600. In our newsletter, we have valuable content that goes beyond what's available in our videos, links to free tools, resources, and all kinds of awesome stuff. You should head over to our website, join3600.com, to sign up today.
Because you can't really, it seems like every other agent solution is trying to train and fine-tune specific use cases, and that's not really generalized, right? So if you try to solve this in a generalized way, we basically realize that what you can do is you can use these large language models to distill the intent of every target into their underlying next step, what the user actually intends to do in the next step in simple language in English, instead of code selectors or computer vision, which might require some statistical analysis. It's all eventually distilled into English, kind of like how these large language models work. And so if you're, for example, trying to push a button, like the post button on Twitter, for example, if you just describe your target as a post button, right? Twitter can change their design of the post button to be green, red, blue, different sizes, move it around the screen, and we'll still be able to find it. This is actually the impetus of working on these kinds of agents. So around 2022, in the summer of 2022, we published like the solution because we realized that what we were working on didn't reach the last mile and actually solve the problem, because these services can change their designs, and we predicted the Twitter would actually change their design before they changed their design, and so they did actually end up changing the post button. You notice, yeah. So it was kind of prescient, but also we only learned this because we spent this years actually working on this agentic solution before ChatGPT API was even released. We were the first startup in summer 2021 to get approved to sell GPT-3 for code generation at all, and that even took several months for us to do it. OpenAI doesn't care now, they let everyone do it, but it took us several months to even get approved because we had to implement security mitigation features to do it. And through all that learning, we realized basically we've had like 3 phases of development. The next phase, in order to solve this problem in a generalized way for our customers, required building a new kind of model. So that's what Atlas One is. So Atlas One actually comes from this idea called Project Atlas. We started over a year before the ChatGPT API was released, was basically how to allow completely non-technical people to build any sort of generalized solution, automation, or problem. And we built it on top of like GPT-3 before GPT-4 was available. But once we got it launched, we realized that that still doesn't solve the problem. You still need to reach basically the last mile and the last 5% of the solution. You still need to solve the problem of how to generalize targeting, how to give GPT-4 and GPT-4 Vision the ability to actually perform precise actions. And Atlas One is a new multimodal model that we trained over the course of a year to understand basically what UI elements are on the screen. And so what it does is it assigns a probability that every UI element on the screen matches the intent of what you want to do in the next step. And if you try to do this with GPT-4 Vision, it doesn't actually have the ability, like it can identify UI elements on the screen, but it can't precisely identify where they match on the screen. And I feel like this is something they'll realize when they start developing these solutions, but we're only a little bit ahead because we started a year before everyone else. And so we built this new whole multimodal model that takes images as input. It detects everything on the screen that's possibly the next step and assigns a probability that it's the next step based on our intent. And so you can imagine that this solves a big problem that's broken all other automation tools today, including UiPath and Microsoft. Because instead of having to build automations or rebuild automations when services change their designs, you can build it once, you can make it sort of dynamic, and even build patterns in completely simple language, basically.
That sounds, yeah, I guess I've definitely had that in the past where I've had businesses where we built scripts to post a particular thing on a particular website, or pull data, especially like if you're building like a leads database or something, and then if there's like a small change in the pagination or the website gets redesigned, you have to go back and develop a whole new script or figure out what broke. And when that happens every month and a half, or that can be quite a headache. So if we go into say the example of somebody who's building a bot to post on Twitter, at what level would you be instructing the bot? Could you just have a bot just like tell it to say something interesting on Twitter, and then it goes and just says something interesting on Twitter?
Yep.
Or would you have to, presumably you would have to provide more detailed instructions than that?
Oh no, you can actually download a Chrome extension now and do exactly what you said. You can say, go post something about whatever you want on Twitter, it'll go post it. However, we have much more advanced, so all this research we've been working on was to solve this holy grail problem. And the reason I've been working on this problem is because during the pandemic, I had free time because I sold some of my IP from my old startup. And so I was kind of floating around building things, and everyone was hurting, including my own friends who had lost their jobs and businesses. And so I started helping them personally build products and go online and teach them how to automate things. But when they started referring me out. So I started doing this pro bono for hundreds of people, actually. And so that was quickly overwhelming for me, if you can imagine. But I realized that after doing it for hundreds of people, there's a lot of the same things. It's basically this kind of like building a business online. It's kind of like a template. You just very simple, it's parameters that you can change and you can do very well. And so I figured that's when around the same time, my friend got me early access to GPT-3, and I figured we could somehow automate what I was doing. And so we scaled that up, but it didn't really it took a year to build this solution, this Project Atlas solution, to actually make it like possible for someone in simple language, because the early version of GPT-3 wasn't powerful enough to do it. And so we've been designing this whole thing for like this whole process of the startup of like over 2 years. We've been designing this, like the original vision was to help those people during the pandemic who are like homeless or living in their cars. And so it's not really easy for them to, you know, build these things or even have a computer to build these things. Most of them are running on their phones. So we're still solving the problem for those original people to go from 0 to 1. And I know we're doing a lot of really great research. I feel like we're even ahead of some of the larger research teams, but we're still building the commercial product to be as cheap as possible and useful for someone who is homeless, actually. And so through that idea, we've been religiously listening to our customers to make it as easy as possible for them. And so that's what these one-click cloud agents actually do. So they take all of our bleeding edge research and making it easy to build these automations, making them future-proof and robust. We host them in the cloud now. We've gone through that whole process of making this scalable and easy to build impossible automations that you can't build in UiPath or Microsoft. And now we've designed the product in such a way that if you have a phone, if you're like in the slums of India, you can actually take advantage of these marketing agents. And it would grow any brand on autopilot, because so like this, I've had other SaaS businesses and helping people like grow in social and things like that. And like what we've learned through that process is in the previous like era in marketing, you would have these automations that would do like one-to-one ratios of like, or even people who are like going through social media and doing like writing posts and interacting with people one-to-one ratios. But that's really not the root problem that the social networks and the root value of the social networks. The social networks, what they're trying to do is basically find good content, right? And so that's how they make more money. That's how they sell more ads. They keep people on their apps. And so in order to help our customers, like the people I was helping during the pandemic, grow a business on their phone while they're struggling with their life, like automatically in the cloud, we really thought about how to solve this problem for them. And we realized that since these networks are looking for just better content, they have now these algorithms that if you post something online, if there's an audience for it and you're building something that's good quality, they'll find it for you. So they'll put it in front of that audience and you'll just start growing actually. And so to take advantage of that, we've built these marketing agents that do A/B testing for you. They can A/B test your profile. They can A/B test any other profile. They can figure out what's converting high and well, and they can send you 18x the traffic of TikTok ads, for example. And that's because these networks are looking for good content. They have basically algorithms that can figure out, find new videos, find new content, and they can put it in front of people. And we just published one-click desktop cloud agents that finally solves this original vision. It's really exciting to do these things for generalized agents and all that stuff, but we only finally just started helping those people that I was helping during the pandemic. That's what I'm really excited about. Okay, so I was helping one person who's like homeless in San Francisco. She's building bespoke 3D printed dancing shoes, and she's struggling between selling the shoes and building them and all that. But this allows her to have a like online presence that constantly drives traffic to her story, her brand, and actually gets her customers. And so we've had other like stories like that where I'm helping people and it's actually working for them. And so that's why I feel like we're like, this design is correct. We're not trying to like build general AI just because it's fun and exciting. We're actually trying to solve real problems. And so the first few customers who are testing this right now are getting, if you go look at like TikTok CPM, it's around $9 per 1,000 views for CPMs. If you build generalized agents, TikTok will find the audience for, if you build good content, TikTok will find the audience for you, and you have the potential to get millions of views actually. And so this isn't unethical social automation. I feel like these networks want this because they're looking for good content. I feel like they might even implement it themselves eventually. And so basically this this design allows us to go from 0 to 1. We have product marketing and sales agents. Our live mode product agents can actually help you design the entire product, build actually a machine learning SaaS business, post it instantly on Vercel, and then you can go to our marketing agents. So we had marketing agents like recently drive 18x the CPM of TikTok ads. And so you can spend much less for free. You can, even with their free account, you can get started. And then once you start growing your business, that helps you like grow your path basically. And I feel like people have been telling us, like investors have been telling us to focus up market and things like that. But there's this much, I think there's the potential size of people who currently own businesses, right? We could go after those people and help them and learn. And we are. But there's a much larger potential size, I think, just because it's really hard to go from 0 to 1, of people who could build businesses, but they're just not able to. It's just barrier of entry is too hard. And I feel like if we lower that barrier of entry, we can actually increase the total potential of the SMB market and grow a lot faster. And it's actually been working, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it does seem like you've had, especially after the pandemic, a lot of people who perhaps moved from traditional employment to other freelancing or starting their own businesses, and that is definitely, there's definitely a lot of potential there. So if we take the example of, you said there's the woman who has the 3D printed shoe company. So her business, she should be selling these shoes presumably, and she would be using TikTok as a marketing channel, and the bots would be generating content for her, or would be engaging her audience. I guess it's like, how does that automation allow her to sell more 3D printed shoes, basically?
Right. So really the hardest part about like launching a product is getting that initial traffic, because once you get any sort of traffic at scale, you'll get some people who are interested in it. And then you can focus on those people and iterate based on their feedback. And that's how you increase that percentage and metrics, by focusing on retention rate and things like that. And so the problem she had was getting from 0 to 1, actually. She was struggling with building the product, and she had no idea about marketing. Most people don't have any idea about marketing. And we have two solutions. Her solution was B2C probably, but we have B2B solutions with cold email outbound sales agents that actually get 2 extra replies of Apollo.io. And so we can kind of teach people to automate these processes normally that they would take hours per day, the entire week doing. They don't have to do it. They can focus on their product, and it's cheap enough that they can have a team of people. So I think this like, I know other people have said this, it's like a force multiplier. These agents do actually help people who are single founders, but if you think about it, that also applies to people who are like at the outskirts of society, who are on their own. They also need help, right? They're single. And so this finally maybe lowers the bar for people like who are actually desperate enough, who don't have any other source of employment, right? If they can find a problem, solve it, find customers at scale, we can give them that traffic constantly daily. That gives them something to iterate on. So it gives them a path actually to iterate on that. If you have statistical significance, enough traffic, then you can iterate an A/B test and things. These are the kinds I'm teaching these people basically, and it allows them a path that they didn't have before. Because normally if you try to get a job or try to get a bank account, even there's this gatekeeping guardrails like preventing you from. But if you can actually build a product, like you can go to ChatGPT and it can teach you to build a product. Even without a product, you can go to ChatGPT, it'll teach you to build a product. But it just makes it hard, right? So we're kind of making it easy, like reducing all the friction so that people who are at basically maybe have really great ideas. Like her idea was actually brilliant. Like I'm pretty sure like bespoke 3D printed dancing shoes would help a lot of people, because it seems like a big market actually. And so there's just she had no ability to like bring any marketing to her or eyeballs to her. No one knew she existed. And so this is kind of the thing that we're trying to solve basically.
Okay, yeah, I could see if like say like perhaps somebody is a B2B consultant of some kind and is able to help businesses with some sort of problem, they could build a cold emailing agent, and I guess you could, I guess you would have to have an agent find leads.
Yep.
Sort of
we have that agent. So we've built that. Yeah, we built that agent already. We've had, before we released this solution, we used our own automations to do cold outbound email. Before we launched on product.net, actually, we did sales, direct sales with the sales team. And we automated Apollo.io. And like the previous era of sales automation was basically sequences and A/B testing. But those sequences weren't really personalized. And so before even the ChatGPT API was released, we did GPT-4 powered sales automation, and it worked. And so our sales team, we had a sales team where before in Apollo.io, they had to like manually control like the state of each customer and then do replies and all that stuff. We automated the API, we automated the replies based on everything they said, and we just sent everyone who was interested in a demo a Calendly link. They didn't have to do anything. They got more demos constantly on autopilot. This was before what we have now. So that's kind of harder. It was like we productized that solution basically. So now we have a cold email outbound sales agent you can set up, an auto responder sales agent we can set up, and it gets double the reply rates of Apollo.io because our lead gen agents actually scrape your email plus your website plus your profile plus everything else we can get from our APIs for enrichment data. And so they send personalized messages in the first message. That seems to get better reply rates, but also they instantly reply in another personalized message. So it seems like a real person, right? So you can try this yourself. I think there's other solutions that are doing this now, but I think we were probably the first. Like if you go back and see, like we were doing this before the ChatGPT API was even released. We didn't focus on selling that. I mean, other startups have focused on selling sales automation because we're working on kind of like a holy grail. We believe that there's another solution that's worth a lot more. I mean, it helps us to sell these things like marketing agents that they pay the bills, but we've been working on like this generalized agent solution for a while.
And so the generalized agent solution is the Atlas One model of having a being able to have agents that iterate to complete tasks.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, so we start during the pandemic. We got early access to GPT-3, but if you go look back at like the old version of GPT-3, it's not really as good as this version. All it could do was generate code, but we were the first people to like think of that idea. I think like maybe Adapt.ai. I don't think anyone else. I go back and look. I haven't heard of anyone else who thought about it around the same time. But we were the first to think about automating browsers and tasks in like summer of 2021. And GPT, like OpenAI, didn't even give us access to sell it because they were afraid of like malicious use cases for code generation. So it took us a few months to build security mitigation features to prove to them that we could handle it, and then they gave us approval. However, that first version, if you go used it, it wasn't really good. So we got customers. We sold on AppSumo. We made like 800K in our first year on AppSumo with a Chrome extension that did no code automations, but it generated code. And most people didn't really understand the code it generated. And in order to use it, you kind of needed to know code to understand how to use it. So it was useful for software developers, but didn't really solve the original problem, which was to help those non-technical people. And so that's what Project Atlas kind of solved. It allows us with this layer on top of all large language models like GPT-4, whatever comes next, to solve that last mile, to basically bridge the gap between, a completely non-technical person's level of understanding and what the current model can do. And so we took us a year to build this framework, Project Atlas. You can think of it like LangChain, but we built it before LangChain. So it basically allows you to simulate key presses, simulate clicks, generate files, open browsers, bypass security restrictions like cross-origin restrictions, everything you need to do to automate the browser and now the desktop. And then we train that into any model that comes next, including every other open source available model that they can install to use. That wasn't even enough. So we kind of got through two phases. So in the first phase, we realized just generating code wasn't enough. Next phase, we realized just teaching the model what it needed to solve the problem wasn't actually enough. Even if you teach the model everything it needs to solve the problem, there's still roadblocks it runs into, like changing designs, making it generalized, making just the model itself able to solve these problems. So that's how we built Atlas One. So last year, we started training a multimodal model to solve this problem of making even GPT-4 able to solve these precise actions on websites that constantly change in a generalized way that we don't have to fine tune every website. And that's kind of like the direction research is going. They're trying to fine tune every use case, and that doesn't seem to work because designs change constantly. And so what we did is we took all of our user data that users helped us basically like figure out what are UI elements, what they're automating on specific websites, and we trained it into a new multimodal model that takes images and text as input. So what Atlas 1 does is it identifies all the elements on the screen that's possibly the next step: buttons, UI elements, text, whatever you need to scrape, basically. We assigned a probability that it's the next step based on our users' usage and the success rate of that automation succeeding. So you get, like, if you want to click a post button on Twitter, it'll get to the post button on Twitter and say, all right, 99%. And then gets another button that's a black button, it's not a post button, say, all right, that's 0%. And through this process, basically, that allows GPT-4 Vision, models like GPT-4 Vision, to make precise clicks and actions. Because if you try this yourself with just GPT-4 Vision, you try to ask it, like, where in the screen do I have to click the post button? It will have no idea. It won't even give you like precise action. You can try to get like precise coordinates or percentages, it won't even get close. And that's because it was never trained on that data. And we realized this because we tried to use it to solve this problem like a year before. So I feel like people will copy this idea, like semantic targets and Atlas 1. It seems like an obvious idea because it solves this huge problem, like, for automation.
Yeah.
But we just built this to solve that root problem, to actually help people in non-technical cases who just have a phone. So we got this working. We got this working now on desktop. You kind of need a desktop application to get it working. Then we got it working in the cloud. It's now working in cloud instances that we can scale to thousands of servers. And now finally we can deploy to a phone to the people that I was helping during the pandemic. And so it's kind of exciting, actually.
Yeah, that is very exciting. So it's Atlas 1 works with GPT-4 Vision, but also all other large language models. So it's like Claude 2 and Mistral and Llama and essentially all of the models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hope to switch to an open source model, because then we can obviously reduce the cost for everyone else eventually. But currently GPT-4 Vision is just, we've tested everything, it's just the best for this state machine. So what we do is we built a state machine that considers, when you give it a request, like you can try this yourself in CheatLayer desktop, search Google for dogs or something, or find a home for a family of 4. It will generate code that it thinks is the current next step based on your current state of the screen using GPT-4 Vision. So it'll take a screenshot of the screen. It'll say, okay, we're on nothing that looks like the Google search page. Next, we need to open Google. It'll open the browser, it'll open Google. It'll take another screenshot. The state machine will then consider that, okay, we're on the Google Home search page. Now we need to actually click the search bar because it sees the search bar. If you try this with GPT-4 Vision itself, it will never get to another step. Then it invokes something, it invokes basically semantic targets in Atlas 1. And so if you go look at our YouTube videos, and you can try it yourself actually, it'll loop through all the elements on the screen and calculate the probability that that element matches the intent of the next step. And then it'll click the search bar. And that finally allows it to continue. And so what happens is, even if the next step is completely different than anything we've ever trained, we've never trained Google search actually into our fine tune. It'll consider what's actually in the next step. And in the family of 4 example, we've tried this multiple different times, and it gets different search results like Google does, right? And actually the path it takes is different, but it somehow always ends up at a solution that's actually maybe slightly different. Sometimes it goes to a different website, right? But it still finds either Zillow, Redfin, or something at the end. So it's kind of exciting because it's actually generalized. Okay, but there are still problems with this generalized solution. So we've now, so you can kind of imagine, we've been spending like a year before ChatGPT API working on this. Then we released Project Atlas. Then we released Atlas 1. Now we're kind of at this point where it's kind of a little bit generalized, but it's still not perfect. If you go try it, right? There's still cases where it will fail when you try something really complex. And so in those, just observing with users using it, what we think is the next step, we have this cool, exciting idea. Basically, we can segment the generations into logical segments. And so this allows a very interesting path that we think is basically the path to the Holy Grail. So what we think is the path to the Holy Grail, what we call the Holy Grail, is a generalized agent that can solve anything. That would really help all the people I was helping in the beginning. Right now, I'm just kind of making it easy for them with one-click forms and stuff, but that would really help everyone. So in order to get to that, what we're noticing is if you generate these code blocks, right? We have the ability now, the agents now regenerate. They have something called a testing loop. We think this testing loop is really the path to the Holy Grail, because this testing loop is kind of like what we do when we build these automations. Basically, it's a testing loop. We iterate and iterate, right? And when I'm using GPT-4 and live mode and stuff like that, it's able to do things that I can't do. So I have this intuition that it should be able to solve this problem. But why can't it solve this problem, right? So we're looking at why it's not solving this problem. And it seems like a big problem is when it generates code blocks, just the model itself has never been trained on solving these generalized problems. It's been trained on specific code in GitHub. That may be enough still. So we realized that, okay, we can take this a step further. We can break up the code that it generates into something called logical segments. What happens usually when these things fail is somewhere along the automation, it has never been trained on a situation. Maybe like a website has changed its design, or an API has changed, or it's a new version of the API, but it's usually somewhere down the code. Maybe it gets successful, but somewhere down the code. And so what this allows us to do is not regenerate the whole code, but regenerate one block of the code. And we've had tests where we regenerate the whole code, and it's successful at the 26th attempt, right? So we've had like a research agent that just constantly failed. It kept regenerating code, but eventually it opened up all these PDFs. You can go look it up on our YouTube, summarize them, and sent the result back. I never expected it to happen because it kept failing it until the 26th attempt. So these agents actually do have the ability to iterate, randomly generate code, and we feel like we're near the point where it's expensive, but possible to brute force our solution to the last mile. So how do we get that solution to be cheap enough for people that I'm helping, like to actually be reasonable, right? We could spend years brute forcing the solution. I suspect some of these solutions would actually work. This is one path. If we segment things into logical segments, we no longer have to generate thousands of tokens of code. If one line fails, like a file is wrong or something, right? We just find out that's a logical segment. Now, since that's only one token, we now have the ability to generate all those generate all the possible solutions, all those 26 possible solutions once in parallel. And then instead of generating the whole code, we can actually keep all of this and assign instead of just a pass-fail metric, a 0 to 100 metric. That allows us to fine-tune constantly, and allows us basically this path to brute force the last mile. And I think we're close enough. I don't think fine-tuning is like going to get us to AGI. I don't think like the research itself is going to get us to AGI in the next year or few years. But I think for specific use cases, we can actually brute force a solution similar to AGI. It just might be very expensive. So how do you solve that problem, right? So that's kind of the problem we're trying to work on right now. And so like in the next few weeks, so Atlas 1 is released. We're going to publish this new solution that should be pushing it maybe 10% more successful rate when people put in something random, basically.
That's very exciting. Wait, so what is the most I guess complex situation that like Atlas 1 is currently able to handle, do you think?
Oh yeah, so what seems to be like a big problem or complex and in terms of value is getting anything outside of the browser security sandbox. So we have like many competitors now who are now thinking about this, but they started where we started in the browser. So they're building browser extensions and stuff like that. However, the browser security sandbox prevents you from uploading files and things because it's secure, and also you can't really upload and like you can only automate things across programs and things like that. So what we're doing is we're not really thinking about what's the most difficult thing it can solve. Like obviously the most difficult thing it could solve could probably be like building like a car or something. We could work on that if we want. We don't think that's really valuable. We're trying to focus on working backwards on what we think is the most valuable for businesses first, and then just getting it to work as automatically and easy as possible. And so for us, it's really marketing agents. And for marketing agents, if you think about it, if you had like hired someone to do marketing for you, right? They would be, A/B testing, creating, processes to analyze and like break down what's working in specific markets and channels and everything, right? How to do all that automatically is very difficult currently for browser. It's impossible for browser agents and things like that. You need to have the ability to upload files. You need to have the ability to A/B test. And that's actually the logic we're building into these agents. So our Twitter agent, it has the ability to upload and generate videos, all that stuff. I'm sure there'll be many products that do that, but it does something really cool. It looks at your profile and looks at your history of posts and actually is able to deduce what is likely to get high converting content, right? And so I've tried this a couple of times and it's really exciting that it can do this. You can look at, or you can look at some other posts, like someone else's profile, like a competitor or something, and you can figure out what's doing well, or even just your homepage, what's really doing well, and it'll copy that. And then it'll just apply your brand to that. And it works. Try it yourself. This is like, I mean, you can teach this, people teach this in classes, like just copy what's working well in business and stuff like that. These agents are able to do it for you, but also automatically every day. So if you put your own profile as the source of scraping, every day it's going to look at what you posted before. If what it generated yesterday didn't get like high engagement, it won't do it again. It'll just focus on what's working well. So this is like a path to actually automate generating better content over time, grow any brand automatically, actually help those people. But it feels like ethical social automation, because these social networks, they don't like when you like and automate likes and follows and stuff like, but they do like generating good content. Everyone likes good content, right? So I feel like they appreciate this actually. So, or they might even implement it themselves. It seems like a good idea.
Yeah, that's what it's. I know Facebook has come out with a bunch of AI sort of chatbots and models, and certainly all of the platforms want high quality content. I could see that there is a potential issue where sometimes very, very high engagement content is also controversial, or like the things that do well are have a particular sense of humor, or are strategically piss off some group of people, but are appeal to another group of people. Do you have what sort of safety guardrails would you have for these bots?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. So we've been thinking about that actually pretty deeply for the last few months, because it feels like we are on the bleeding edge of some of these solutions. And when we first started, OpenAI forced us to actually build security mitigation solutions to prevent things like viruses and keyloggers. And you can try it; it will never generate that. So that's one thing. But we've taken it a step further than what they forced us to do, because I've noticed users have actually tried to use our product maliciously, including for political reasons or hate speech and racism, basically, and things like that. And so we don't want any of that to happen. So at one level, we've trained our models to just prevent you from doing anything like that. So if you try to do things like that, it'll just say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. At another level, we've realized that it's actually possible to jailbreak these things. So I published a solution a few years, or not a few years ago. I did publish a solution to this, but I didn't build it actually. Now we've actually built this. So what we think is that a better way to do this is probably to build another model at the chip level. Because if you think about it, if you're trying to pick a lock, right? If you have to add multiple stages to the lock, it's not really adding new pins to the lock in LLMs. If you try to have a model between a model, it's more like trying to pick a lock with tongs. Because you can't really, you have to both understand the model itself and then jailbreak that, and then jailbreak whatever it's doing. It's not actually adding more pins to the model by adding another model. So I think an ideal solution to this, beyond just what we do, is a chip level model, something that Intel builds, that is just something no one else can. I mean, most other people can't conceivably. I mean, state actors will be able to do this. Does the same thing we're doing. We have two models now, basically, not just one model. We have another model that checks the output, and it does a few things for us. It kind of does something like mixture of experts. So we have several different models that have been fine-tuned for things that are really good at things. It seems to work well, but also it filters out malicious use cases. So even if someone jailbreaks are the first prompt, they still have to go through this other prompt. That's really hard to do. And so I think it's hard to do, but it'll prevent bad actors. But even in that case, it doesn't prevent bad actors from just dumping the code and trying to reverse engineering the code. So I think in the long-term solution isn't us doing this. It has to be someone like Intel at the hardware level, at the chip level, who implements a model-based solution at the chip level that is dynamic. It has to be a model-based solution. It can't be a hard-coded solution just by virtue of what the models can do. And I don't think they have incentive to do it, actually. You kind of probably someone has to force them to do it. But if you do that, it will probably delay the worst of these outcomes. And it will give us researchers time to build the next solution. I think this is important, actually. It might delay the worst of these outcomes by a few years. So I published this on my LinkedIn a few months ago, and I talked about this for years. But I'd be happy if someone copied this idea, actually, because I think it's really important. Yeah.
So you said you have basically two models. You have kind of a supervisor and agent, something like that. And
we have several models, but yeah, those are kind of two levels at that for security. Yeah.
Yeah. So for security, there are two levels of models, and one is checking the other. Is that sort of the basic idea?
Yeah.
And because it is very tricky. I know several years ago I was working on this Facebook ad campaign for a diversity initiative, which was an anti-racism initiative, but Facebook ended up pulling down all of our ads because they were considered political speech. And it's if oftentimes like the platforms are promoting content that is interesting, but then to be interesting, you have to have a point of view, and then if you have a point of view, some people disagree with it, and it's it's definitely very, very complicated. And I would think, like, if you're running the service, would you be able to identify bad actors and sort of remove their license, or have some kind of kill switch? Would that be a way?
I get an email every time anyone triggers this thing, and so we have the option to kill them. But most of the time, they don't mean it. It's like just something like innocuous and things like that. But in some cases, actually, there are people using our service to try to do like malicious things, like political campaigns and advertising, because you can do mass social campaigns now, and it's probably going to make a difference in like the election year, I feel like. So we do need to pay attention to this, and I think even more than just paying attention to this, I think our solution doesn't prevent it, because they're obviously open source solutions. People could copy this and rebuild things basically just by virtue of us teaching them this works. So I don't think us solving this solves the problem. I think it has to happen at the hardware level, at the chip level, and that will only delay the worst outcomes by a few years, actually, because state actors and people you can go look on YouTube. People can build their own chips now, and so. I think this is a very important thing to talk about, and we've been like publishing like our insights on this, hoping people copy what we're doing eventually.
And so, like, the worst case, you imagining some sort of like disinformation campaigns or large scale political interference, essentially.
Much worse than that, and I don't even like talking about it because it feels like it inspires people. But so these models have the ability to build basically drones that can hunt anyone with their profile picture, and they can be 3D printed, and anyone can now generate the code and 3D printed model with these current models. They just have someone actually has to go do it. So that's already very dangerous. I think CPUs should stop doing that already, but the next model can take it even a step further. If agents actually do become successful, like what we're building actually does become successful, there are certain limitations that prevent you from building actually dangerous things that these agents could get you around, and I don't even want to talk about that.
Probably better to not talk about that, but hopefully that the good outcomes happen in the next few years, and that we avoid the
it feels like the political issues are like not like the least dangerous, but like there's a lot more danger in harming people. Right.
Yeah, certainly. If you were talking about drones, and I guess also you have doxing, and you have.
Well, OpenAI has their own red team on bioweapons. That's another big issue as well. So those are the big. So the big issue seems to be bioweapons, viruses, automated viruses, and I think really a bigger issue is these kamikaze drones, because you saw it in the Ukraine war. I've been warning about this for years. I feel like it was a big problem. Now it could happen like in our streets. There's nothing that stops it. So we're maybe like a few research papers away from a very dangerous future where it makes it very easy for malicious actors to target anyone. So it's kind of scary.
Right. Yeah. That hopefully people can act in the real world to prevent the negative outcomes. So in your Atlas 1 announcement, you said that you anticipate a future in about a year when AI models will be able to build whole websites. I guess right now they can build whole websites, but build whole services like HubSpot or LinkedIn with one single prompt, which is a bold vision for the future, certainly. And so you said this will disrupt all existing SaaS businesses, because everyone will be able to build their own personalized version of these services for free. That like anybody could build a website like this. So I guess could we talk a bit more about sort of like what would this future look like? Because I mean, so it's like we connected on LinkedIn. So in a few years, are we like what sort of would I be using my own personalized LinkedIn, and you would, or Like how would these SaaS services get disrupted by AI?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this for a while, and we've had discussions with our own community about this. And so basically, like when we started building live mode, we realized these agents have access to every open source library. You can now use CheatLayer Desktop to generate a clone of YouTube. Or if you go search GitHub plus Netflix, YouTube, whatever, there's sometimes a clone of it already existing. So this kind of idea already exists, but for software engineers. And so these models like allows this vast solution space finally to non-technical people. But it's even better than that. So if you can think about it, like these large SaaS businesses, like take HubSpot for instance, right? They have thousands of customers, things like that. They can't build. I mean, they're obviously focusing on building the best features for the average customer. But they can't build the feature that you want specifically, maybe because you're only one customer. And also, like they charge as much as possible. They're a business. They have to make as much profit as possible. But HubSpot itself, if you think about it, there's nothing really invented, or Salesforce really. I mean, there's not really much invented in building tables for CRM and things like that. So these agents know how to build all these things with open source technologies, actually. And I've been talking to VC, like as you can imagine, we've had a lot of VC interest and things like that. We've been like, I feel like we're teaching them, they expect this not to happen. We're teaching them, like kind of blowing their minds of what is happening and kind of scaring them a little bit because that's their whole market, right? So if you can imagine, they can't do it now. But when we get to around a context limit of 500K to 1 million tokens, that's around the number of tokens that you need to generate LinkedIn or HubSpot. Right now, they're around 100K tokens. That's why we can't even like think about it right now, maybe. But around 500K, you can generate these entire services. And it's not really that easy. We need to actually train on generating those, and someone has to go train on generating those entire services. But once we get there, it's conceivable. We'll get there. Research will get there. Then you can imagine everyone will have a model in their pocket that can generate a version of HubSpot with custom features locally that's more secure. You have your own data, and it's free. And so basically the problem, like in capitalism, seems to be in the US at least, these monopolies, right? When you grow to a certain scale, these monopolies like Verizon, they dominate a market. They have regulatory capture. They implement policies that prevent any other competitors, things like that. And it leads to bad support inevitably. Usually all these, even Google, like all these companies, when they go to a certain scale, it leads to bad support inevitably. And even before all this AI stuff, I felt like the general solution to that problem itself was to force these monopolies into a platform that allowed local resellers. It's still LinkedIn, but just local resellers, because you can understand that when you know someone locally and you're working with like a local mom and pop business, they're going to be kinder to you. They know who you are. They have the capacity to know who you are. So their support will always just be better than Google or Facebook. They never know who you are. They'll forget you are. And then whoever's working with you will get fired or something, right? So it feels like generally this has been a good solution for that problem in capitalism. And agents will finally like force it to happen, even if we don't have like policies. I feel like agents will force it to happen. Because if you imagine everyone has an agent in their pocket that can generate their own version of HubSpot, what do you think is going to happen? Like try to like have a thought experiment. What will happen? What I think will happen, I mean, we can't really predict what will happen, is something like this where there aren't network effects, where everyone will basically, these agents will be a commodity. Everyone will have access to these generalized agents eventually that can build anything, any service, right? So the real differentiating factor will be those personalized relationships with local businesses that actually like you know that you maintain, because everyone will have access to these things, and they'll be separate brands, and they'll build their own brands and have fun things and all that stuff. They'll be interesting, but I don't think it'll actually kill. I mean, it'll probably disrupt SaaS completely, but I don't think people will lose their jobs and all that. I think it'll just enable these kind of new kind of market where all the value is concentrated like in a few companies, but now there'll be way more businesses. I don't think people will actually like lose income. They might lose their jobs, but they have this opportunity to build actually a significant business. So agents.
The opportunity seems does seem massive. I guess like thinking about, so like I said, like we connected on LinkedIn. Essentially the problem I was trying to solve is like I'm looking for interesting AI company founders to interview. And I guess like instead of going on LinkedIn, you could imagine me talking to a bot of some kind, and the bot might maybe the bot then would go onto LinkedIn and then send you a message on LinkedIn, and maybe we'll talk to your bot, and then there's some set of intermediate bots that would mediate this sort of communication between people, and perhaps the platforms live somewhere in there.
That's an interesting idea. Oh, actually, that might end up happening. That's an interesting idea, and I think the networks themselves are going to implement these bots themselves. But I think like really, what's going to happen is even the networks themselves will realize that they can't grow that much faster with what is happening with the competition and scale and generating this content. So I don't think it'll disrupt like the problem you're solving, but there are other problems where it will be completely disrupted, because the problem that you're solving is scalable, right? There are other businesses that are not scalable, basically everything that requires support. And so I think in those businesses, agents will have this opportunity to completely disrupt like all SaaS businesses. And it's like most of the largest SaaS businesses. LinkedIn is more like B2C, or like a social network, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you could take HubSpot. You could imagine that there's like a very specialized version of, like a HubSpot for.
There'll be thousands, I think, thousands of versions of HubSpot. One for the Northeast or even Massachusetts. There'll be one for your city, maybe. There'll be one for your city or just in Boston, just for education. In Boston, just for manufacturing. That can all exist because everyone will have this same ability to generate the top version of HubSpot with the best technology instantly. Imagine that, right? If you can generate Netflix yourself and resell it yourself, what is the competing factor? I mean, other than like policies preventing you from doing that. And so what I think would be the competing factor is you can go sell it, you can go meet people. They would be willing to pay you less than HubSpot because you know them personally, and HubSpot will never meet with them personally. So I mean, we could be wrong, but it feels like that's the general direction that's things are going, basically, and that's why we're designing it this way.
Yeah, I guess like the thing is there are massive switching. Like if a business is already using HubSpot and built out a HubSpot for a whole bunch of use cases, there's a lot of inertia there, and but at the same time, if you have a competitor who's 100 times cheaper and plausibly can provide the same service, and you see your competitors, adopting that and then having lower prices, you end up with this sort of deflation that kind of forces people to perhaps think more rigorously about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the classical like innovation argument and things like that. But the really unique thing about this is it changes the market because it actually lowers the bar of people who can build these businesses, right? And so I think there's just going to be like an orders of magnitude more businesses competing, and it's completely going to completely change the market. Even if HubSpot is able to build a slightly better product, but for how long? Because these agents can generate exactly what they have, and I think it's like I don't think. Well, basically, there's this idea that data is probably going to be the defensive moat. So I think it doesn't mean that you won't be able to compete. You still will be able to compete, but your data that you get from your customers will basically allow you to be specialized in your market and region. So for example, if you're in the Northeast and only selling real estate or something, that's very different from California and real estate. And HubSpot is selling to everyone. And they can't always build all those features for everyone. So I feel like it'll even build better products because they have this ability to focus on specific markets, get better customers. I think eventually, just by virtue of reducing the churn, reducing the inefficiency of the product, not even reaching what they need to solve, it should increase the total GDP of the entire market, because there's a lot of lost money in that efficiency, right? It's billions, I think, probably. We can't even imagine what it is, but it's gonna get cut down just by virtue of these agents cutting it down for you.
So I guess would that imply sort of a future of a bunch of very sort of small software teams, but perhaps we don't see as many 1,000-person software companies, or
so right now I'm actually using live mode to generate almost all of our code, and it's not because I can't write the code. I know exactly what code needs to be written and stuff. It's because it does it 10 times faster than me. So I actually think that you won't need software teams for most of these, like for HubSpot, right? It's not inventing anything. It's a table and a database. I don't think you actually need a software team for HubSpot or generating all those features. Agents can do all of that actually. So if you can imagine a business like HubSpot doesn't actually need a software team eventually. Then everyone else can also build these same features just by talking to their agent to generate whatever feature they want. It gets built, it gets tested, everything, all that stuff. It's going to take a while to get to that point, but we are on the path to get to that point. Nothing stops us from getting there, actually. So,
so I guess like if we take the example of the somebody building a HubSpot for real estate in the Northeast, you could imagine maybe that company is like one person, and that one person has a handful of AI agents, and they have a software AI agent that's building the software, and they have a customer support AI agent who's handling all of the customer support queries. Then they have like a sales AI agent who's doing cold outreach. And then they have like a bunch of marketing AI agents that are like posting videos. And then, I guess you have one human there who's sort of like wrangling the AI agents.
Yeah, or a small family or something. Yeah, that's totally possible. Yeah. I mean, I always recommend founders start doing things manually just to learn the market themselves. But yeah, once they figure it out, they can scale it up with agents. Nothing stops them from doing that.
Right. Yeah. And I guess you might have some users with very specific use. I guess the question is like, at what point do you have a human in the loop? And there probably would be some humans who, they probably would have to understand the competitive landscape and, talk to customers and things like that. But it's, I've seen some people talk about how the, in that sort of vision of the future, the VC model is sort of disrupted because you don't need to raise as much money, basically. And so you have a larger number of much smaller outcomes, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like I've been in the VC world. I raised 3.9 million for my first few startups, 3.2 million in my first startup, and it really just feels like a game. A lot of the VCs that I raised money from, they weren't actually concerned about like the end product. They were just concerned about getting their payout, getting the IPO or like the next VC funding round. And if you talk about like most of these VCs, it feels like they've strategized to playing this game, but not actually strategized to helping people or building good products. And so they've gotten very good at playing this game, and that's why you cannot kind of see why interest rates have like completely disrupted like IPOs. There's no C rounds anymore and things like that. And I don't think VC will completely go away. I think there will be opportunities for like research and money, and there will be winner take all situations, but it won't be in like these HubSpot businesses. It won't be in like the majority of businesses, which with agents will very soon be able to generate. It'll be in like this next level of VC, I think, will emerge. Will be like the bleeding edge of generating maybe the next model or things like that. That'll still exist. That will always exist. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So perhaps more, I guess, sort of like real world applications of, I guess, the sort of nuclear fission and going to Mars and these.
Yeah, that needs money. Things like that will always need money. Yeah.
That's always going to be an expensive.
Yeah.
Expensive thing. So before CheatLayer, you built real-time 3D reconstruction, a 3D reconstruction system with a tennis channel and a novel 3D reconstruction algorithm. So how did you get from there to this AI work?
Oh yeah, that's a cool story. Yeah. So I guess a little bit over 10, 12 years ago now, Halsey Minor, who's this founder of CNET. Do you remember CNET from the 90s? Yeah. It still exists. Yeah.
Yeah, it still exists.
Yeah. But so he was the founder of CNET. He went looking for a way to revitalize horse racing because that was his passion as his childhood. And he's a tech guy. And so he figured that he could bring a younger audience into the stands if he set up like big screen 3D screens, but without glasses. So you don't have to wear glasses to hear them, and also made like 3D audio, made it like a cool experience and stuff like that. And so he found my professor at BU, who was the foremost researcher in auto stereo glasses free 3D at the time. And so I'd been helping him and things like that. And then they found me because I was working at a defense company in Massachusetts. I was one of the earlier people working on GPGPU, which is CUDA parallel processing. And so I was helping Mercury convert their old scientific functions into parallel GPU functions and kind of making it faster and stuff like that. So the problem with driving these big screens at the time in 2011 was that you couldn't drive them in real time from many different views and cameras, or you had to set up many cameras, and so it was hard. My professor solved the problem of generating synthetic views with an like an interpolation formula that actually looked photorealistic. And so we co-founded a company. That was my senior project. We solved that problem. We got it to work in real time. We drove these screens, and then Halsey and I co-founded this company trying to like monetize this around 2011. Around 2011, it was novel for anyone to really do anything interactive with sports. No one was doing anything interactive with sports. We got to meet with basically all the big media executives globally, including B-Sky-B in Europe, SES Astro in Asia, CBS, NBC, Fox, Comcast. I met Leslie Moonves. So we did demos to them. We showed them that technology, but on accident, when we were like setting up this demo, we realized that instead of generating the screen that no one buys, you could slide around the outside with all those infinitely many views smoothly, like the Matrix effect, kind of like, because we could generate synthetic views. So we have an old video with the tennis channel where you kind of slide around the outside and stuff like that on our YouTube channel. And basically that was exciting for sports, and we raised a lot of money, and we demoed to like all the big media executives. But the feedback they told us was the majority of sports fans don't like interacting, and they were right. They were correct, actually. That was true. That was actually what Leslie Moonves told me. He's like, majority of sports fans don't like interacting. They want to sit back on the couch and watch a crystal clear broadcast. And that's true. That's correct. That's how they make most of their money. So what they really wanted was the ability to move the broadcast camera anywhere live in real time. And it just had to look exactly photorealistic. So Halsey Meyer around 2013 had to file for bankruptcy because of the 2008 crash. He had a hotel loan that fell to negative 50 million. And so I split off from him. He's doing fine now. He went into cryptocurrency. He's doing really well, because if you get to a certain scale, you can kind of raise money and build anything. It's really cool like that. So he's doing fine, but I had to split off from him. I raised another around $1 million to build that idea. We filed patents with that money, and I have granted US and international patents on that technology. It was just like maybe a decade too early because the bandwidth wasn't there to stream sports over the internet. But we basically tried to solve the problem of photorealistic allowing you to fly around anywhere inside the screen, like inside the scene, reconstructing all the players in photorealistic 3D, using this new algorithm that we designed. We spent like a year designing it, and it actually worked in real time. So we got patents for that. I spent several years building that. And at the end of it, we never ended up selling it because, 3D technology, we were probably too early. The bandwidth didn't exist to stream those entire like stadiums to people's devices. I still know how to do it. I think that's something fun I might do one day. But what ended up happening is this founder of Standard Cognition. Standard Cognition is a startup that does like an Amazon Go competitor where you can go into a store and like pick up something and walk out. He found me. It's a YC funded startup. And he found me because he needed to solve this problem for, mapping an entire store in a large space and triangulating precise positions in that. And no one had solved that really in open source or any sort of solution before, but we had solved it years before for stadiums in an automated script that I had built years before. And so before we helped them, you can go look back at their old videos. They had a solution for a single camera on like a shelf and stuff. It worked when you picked up things off a single camera with many people. But when you went to multiple videos, their triangulation for accuracy on like finding your hand was feet off. So you can imagine if you're here and you think you're here, it'll go into someone else's hand. And that's like the biggest problem. If you know tracking, there's this thing like called swaps or a MODA score. And the swap is kind of the worst thing you can do in tracking because you switch people and that screws everything up. Yeah. And so they had this huge problem. Yeah. And so that's why he found me. And I had a working solution. I was able to like instantly set it up for them. I helped them set up all their stores in their first street on Market Street. If you go to San Francisco, they have a street, like a store, first store on Market Street. They have a store on Market Street where you can actually go walk in, pick things off the shelf. And now they're down to inch accurate. And that's because in 2013, we had built a unique solution that didn't exist in research. So like the foremost solution in research for this is something called bundle adjustment. And it's still like not very accurate. So we had figured out something that I don't think it's published anywhere yet, where we printed out huge markers, like the entire stadium long. We printed out huge markers. And then we did a reverse projection to a global coordinate space. I don't think anyone's done that. And then we did a nonlinear solver to get the error of the reprojections down to 1 inch accurate. And so it's completely different from bundle adjustment. I don't think this exists in research. We didn't publish it. We have a patent. I'm like, doesn't give away the trade secrets, but I built it for them. So it allowed them to finally launch. They're doing well. I don't know if they still use the solution, but it allowed them to finally get to inch accurate and stuff like that. And so they paid me a lot for that. And that was basically why I had free time during the pandemic. So they paid me enough that I was kind of retired for a few years since 2018. I mentioned I digital nomaded around. So I was like working on like whatever I thought people needed help with. And the pandemic happened, and I just started building things. Yeah.
That's so so they needed to be an inch accurate for, were they like tracking inventory in the stores, or they were concerned about like shoplifting or the number of people in the stores, or what was?
Yeah, so to do autonomous checkout, you have to like autonomous checkout. So you have to track the person, you have to track their hands, and then when they pick up something off the shelf, you have to assign what they pick up to their bag. And so you can imagine when you try to track their hand to pick up something off the shelf, if it's feet off, it goes to another person and it assigns it to their bag. And like if you're in like a place like Walmart that has like people really close next to each other, it's really hard. You can't be feet off in anything. And so what they had this solution before me. They had like a wizard behind the curtain who would look at all the checkouts and like fix them manually for them and stuff like that. And if you look at their like, I have old videos of like their triangulation. It was like all off the like. All their triangulations were all off in the map. And then as soon as we implemented our solution, like zeroed in on each person. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of cool.
Interesting. So I guess I only know autonomous checkout really as a consumer. So my perception of autonomous checkout is like you go and you scan, and then when you're scanning the whatever you're buying, that's when it's rung up.
Oh, yeah, you don't have to do that. Yeah, so you can go to in San Francisco, if you go to their standard market, you can just walk in, pick something off the shelf, and walk out the door. They charge you. Yeah.
They charge you. So obviously, if they charge like the person next to you, that really is a problem. And
Amazon Go also does this, and they also have that issue where they sometimes mess up. But they in their like receipt, they say that you can just say if they messed up and they'll refund you or something.
But they're able to identify you because they have your picture, or you have some sort of identifying.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give away their proprietary technology, but basically they use machine learning models just like Amazon Go, but Amazon Go uses a lot more technology. They have stuff on the shelf to actually detect like things are going off the shelf. Standard Cognition did it all entirely with cameras. And so there's an open source model called OpenPose that they can like figure out where your hands and legs are, and they use that for triangulation. And then they have like object detection models that can figure out what the object is you're picking up. And then they basically have to map that to what you're carrying around in your store. And Amazon Go kind of does the same thing, but they use way more technology. They use like shelf sensors to make sure it's accurate and all that stuff. But Standard Cognition solved it using computer vision, basically. And I kind of helped them with the tracking, basically. Interesting.
So that's how you had a computer vision background that you've now taken onto to Cheat Layer.
Yeah, it's kind of. I was thinking about this. Like when we started solving this problem, I figured computer vision would likely be the ultimate solution, and browser was not going to be the end game. And it ended up being super useful actually.
Have you done any work? Because like you said, Atlas One is multimodal and it's text and computer vision. Have you done any work or thought about the like audio side of AI, or how that might work in the future as far as like people prompting through audio?
Yeah, not on the research side, but on the application side, we had like really cool experiences where, like when we launched these agents before like the ChatGPT API allowed this possible. So we linked 11 labs and these agents, and I had this experience where I put basically, if you run these agents on our dashboard, you can put it in your headphone. You can do this now. You can walk around. I've done it on my phone as well, and you can train this agent with everything that you care about. And so I've been working on something called live mode, basically, where I have this problem in my own business, where you can imagine you're trying to track how revenue changes, but you can only track certain input signals with your customers, right? But these agents have the ability to track like signals across your entire business, across all your emails, your calendars, news sources, even things externally to your business. And so I tried to set this up myself just for my own email, and it's really fun and it's interesting. So I don't think we've nailed the UI yet, but if you put this in your headphone, you should try this yourself. I think ChatGPT has this now. We did this before the ChatGPT app. You can talk to it, and you can actually ask it. Like I did this accidentally, actually. So I was just going out through my day, and I had this stuck in my headphone, and I was frustrated about something about our business. I just said it, and it actually responded in a useful way for me. That was like really helpful. And so I didn't realize that was like a modality that could be helpful for businesses. But now, yeah, we're thinking about this where we could have something called live mode, like a business assistant, like an executive assistant
Right.
that like listens to everything that's happening to you, maybe even your conversations that you're having with people, but only steps in when you need it. And that, I think that was the key, because sometimes like it was talking and I didn't want it in my ear actually, but in that one case it was super useful. So how do we find those like super useful cases where it like can step in? So I think live mode, semantic targets, we've been thinking about how to do this with semantic targets. Everything that happens on your screen, we can trigger events when something like negative or positive happens, like record that in your log, and then you have the ability to talk back to your executive assistant saying, okay, what did I need to go do today? What did I didn't see today that happened in the other market? And that would be super helpful for me actually. Yeah.
So, but then does the executive assistant has all of the context about your business and all of the in some sense like knows more than you have in your head at that point. And so I guess if you have like a dialogue with the executive assistant, you know may be able to get some. I imagine like that is a whole emerging field of like how can humans interact with AI such that the human feels like they're getting value from it.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it happened accidentally. Like I didn't expect it to be that valuable actually. So I think it's hard to find those cases. And it's like a UI issue. Like it can't be constantly responding to everything you do. It has to be able to deduce what is important and where it can step in, I think.
Right. Yeah, I've seen like people built these sort of like AI business coaches or personal assistants, and it's a tricky because you have to. It's I guess like with Rumsfeld, you have like the knowns, unknowns, and known knowns, and it can be hard perhaps to get. So what was that sort of insight that you got? I don't know if it's something you can talk about, but like at a high level, like what was the missing piece that the AI gave you that was helpful?
Okay, so I kind of, I think I swore or something, so I can't say everything, but it was basically like, what the fuck is happening? Like, it's something about our advertising, basically. Something changed about our advertising, and I had no idea what caused that. And I was just saying it, and then it gave me like actual useful insight that was right. So it was really exciting because I would probably maybe have spent time figuring it out myself, but it gave it to me instantly. And that didn't happen all the time. So like it seems like a UI problem, UI UX problem that these agents could solve. We call it live mode now. We're working towards something like this, where you don't even have to initiate anything. They kind of step in and help grow your business. I think that's the next step for us, actually.
And it comes with I guess like a recommendation or an insight or something. And I mean, the issue is like you have to have a very high hit rate on that, or else people will just like start screening out the recommendations and start ignoring it.
Yeah.
So like, how are you finding new users for CheatLayer? I know, like you mentioned, you're on AppSumo, and I know you have a lot of recommendations on Product Hunt. Have you been doing paid ads, or like how do people typically find you?
Yeah, so we stopped being on AppSumo last year. We had an AppSumo deal last year. Basically, I had the choice when we were launching AppSumo, because we had this idea of basically helping people during the pandemic, and there were VCs who were interested in giving us like a pre-seed for that idea. And I thought that that wouldn't be the right path because we needed customers to give us data. And AppSumo has basically power users who will test any new product. And if you go look at our early version of the product, it's very ugly, actually. I'm kind of embarrassed that we don't even have videos, I think, anywhere published, but it's very ugly. And so I think it would have only been launched in AppSumo uniquely because there are power users who will like look at your vision and what you want to build in the future and help you, like pay you just for that vision and future and like support you for that. So we got a lot of really diehard supporters out of AppSumo, and they paid for the product before, honestly, before it was like really worked really well. But through their feedback, we learned what was valuable for businesses to automate. We learned what were all the roadblocks we need to solve. That was super valuable, actually. So we ended that in last year, November of last year, and then we started. We started a sales team, actually, and we did pretty well with sales automation. I mentioned we automated Apollo.io. We tried to sell that. That did pretty well, but it kind of took off after our product hunt launch in April. So we finally launched everything that we're doing with Project Atlas in April 1st, and we got #1 product of the day. And that kind of like organically like shot us off because influencers found us, they shared us, and since then it's mostly been organic growth, actually. So we've been like ranking on keywords, and we've been getting maybe like a 10% conversion rate and just growing. We grew. So we had maybe 5K in MRR when we launched in Product Hunt. We've now grown to 38K in MRR. In the first month, we grew 8K. And now it's been growing 20% month over month. So actually it's kind of exciting because it's mostly organic, but it's slowing down. So it was 40% month over month when we first launched. And I think because that was just by virtue of the hype around ChatGPT and all these things. People just wanted to try cool things, and we were just slightly cooler than ChatGPT and could do more things. And so they bought us. But now we're actually focusing on like distilling all that research into repeatable one-click forms for businesses to get, for example, 18x the CPM of TikTok ads. And so that's how we're actually maintaining our retention rate. It's still mostly organic. We have affiliates who are paying for ads. We have some affiliate programs and things like that. It's not the majority of our traffic, actually. So we haven't even focused really on marketing, but we're now wanting to focus on marketing because we launched this thing called Atlas One that actually competes with UiPath and Microsoft, and we have this opportunity to actually scale up that conversion rate. So we're going to do something interesting. So in 2 weeks, we're going to launch again. I've tested like our ROI and Google Ads and all these things, and we get like 4 to 8x ROI, and like the CPM is still pretty expensive, basically. So our biggest problem seems to be that most people don't even know we exist. I feel like if people knew we exist, they would start using us and testing us, and we could scale that 10% conversion rate like crazy. And so I have this idea where basically we're going to do something like an interesting launch. So we have friends dispersed like globally and stuff like that. So they're going to help us with this. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to find people who have lost their jobs, maybe, who are struggling, or even lost their jobs due to AI, and we're going to hire them. We're going to pay them, and we're going to pay them to basically hang out in the largest big cities in the U.S., New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, and basically wear this sign that says, AI took my job, but I get paid to do this now. And with CheatLayer, they get to hang out, they get to teach people about CheatLayer, but they also get to like go around their city and enjoy their city. And it isn't like disparaging them, but it's actually like to show people that there is a possibility for these people to actually, there's a future beyond AI. And I think that it is that future where everyone is kind of like on the same level playing field, and we're going to give this material to these people to like hand out, and we're going to start these things. So we've grown actually pretty quickly, mostly entirely online, but we've been doing these in-person events. So in January, we did the live hackathon in-person event, and I feel like we want to focus on these live in-person events, and just because by virtue of what we're doing is striking. And I feel like when you see these things online, people don't really, like, it seems like it's just like a fad or something not really real or realistic that we can actually help them. But in these in-person events, we can get non-technical people coming to these hackathons. We can have these people going around the country who are like getting millions of eyeballs for us. And I feel like that CPM is going to be actually 10 to 100x less than what we do with paying for ads, probably. And it's weird enough that we might even get like picked up by like a news station or something. So it has that potential to go viral. So that's what we're going to do for that next launch, I think. And we didn't feel comfortable doing that before because we really didn't feel like we solved the problem. But with these one-click marketing agents, we actually can help these people who are completely destitute. And I can't really reach them. These people mostly aren't online. They're not looking for a product. So how do we reach them, right? So I think really to help these people, we have to like have ground crew, hit the payment, and go from the ground up.
Yeah, I think like that sort of like hopeful messages, but very important because you have a lot of people who are sort of vaguely afraid about AI, but have really no idea what that means.
Yeah.
And these, like you had said, these tools are really, democratizing the opportunity. Like you don't need the some of the technical skills you might have needed in the past if you can just build something with natural language. And so that's it sounds like an interesting strategy. So what were some roadblocks that you had identified when you were on AppSumo? You said you found some power users, and it sounds like they basically gave you some good feedback that let you get to where you are now.
Yeah, so AppSumo is basically, it's a good place to get users because they have this on-ramp to basically compete with any monopoly, any kind of SaaS monopoly. Because if you think about it, if you look at AppSumo itself, like a lot of the products are kind of the same. They're kind of targeting the same, but that's because people always need these solutions. So they're kind of like always SEO, marketing, things like that. But they're like incrementally getting better. People always need these solutions, and there are monopolies that exist in these markets. And so it kind of gives it, I think I'd recommend it to people who are really desperate, who have never launched a product before. It gives you this opportunity to get customers and learn from their feedback. So that kind of, it's a problem it's solved. It solves a problem of getting customers, basically. However, in the long term, it's really hard to turn that into a sustainable business because they pay once. So they pay once, and these models are very expensive. And so we had a lot of struggle with that, to how to allow these early supporters access to these very expensive models while continuing to develop. And that's going to be a stress that you're going to have to deal with if you launch on AppSumo. So you'll always have to think about like maybe two different like pricing models for your early supporters who helped you get here and gave you all that feedback, and how to reward them, and then your new customers. And so it was actually probably very difficult. So I recommend AppSumo for people if you've never launched a product before, because it helps really solve that problem of getting customers, and then you will learn how to build a better product. But if you already launched a product, I think we had other choices. Like we had a choice of getting like for example, pre-seed investment and things like that. And we had other choices. I think it might have been possibly we could have gotten there faster because we had this friction of trying to figure out how to deal with like allowing these expensive models for thousands of users. We only have hundreds of subscribers actually. So you can imagine if we gave free access to thousands of users, we would go out of business. And we figured out a way to do it. So like the original vision of CheatLayer was actually to build a business and use those profits to subsidize usage for free users. And so we kind of ended up doing that. I didn't expect it to actually work so well, but we actually did it. We ended up doing it. So what's happening now is we have enough subscribers who are paying full price, like $200 a month or $50 a month, that they subsidize the usage for lifetime users. And those lifetime users actually, they tend to be like our most active power users. Even still, they use the product even more than like the subscribers and things. So we really do value their research. However, it's like a burden. So I feel like I shouldn't tell people to do this without warning them, because it will be a burden. If you grow to any success or scale, this will be a burden that you'll have to think about very deeply and how to make it successful, or the whole business will end. It's kind of not very easy. But you can design products like Chrome extensions, for example, where the margins are so high because people are like running it on their own machines, that are totally fine for AppSumo. The only problem I have with AppSumo is that, like I mentioned, this vision we have for the future. If you think about it, like if everyone can generate all these products, and these versions on AppSumo are basically copies of already the best products and things like that. It might seem like it seems to me like it might be these commodity marketplaces will be the first to get disrupted probably before SaaS, because these commodity marketplaces don't have like the defensive mode of these SaaS businesses, right? So if you go to these marketplaces, they charge $99 for a product, but very soon you'll be able to have an agent generate that version of the product.
Right. So you just have to like buy have one AI agent, AI, that then I guess builds, all of these, could I conceivably build all of the services on AppSumo or something like this. So
Yeah, it seems like wild now, but I feel like in a year we'll be laughing at it or something. It seems like the difference between those smaller businesses and the HubSpots and larger is they have the staff and the support in it, right? And so if the agent itself can basically replicate that support better, I don't know what the competitive advantage is going to be. I don't know how you can sell lifetime deals anymore, actually. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because that's oftentimes you'll have, like, you might be able to have identical software, but the company can offer very good support or sales or guarantees or anyway, yeah, will be interesting to see what happens. Let's see. So I saw on CheatLayer, you say that you can build your own version of Zapier is on your pricing page.
Oh, yeah, we don't really advertise that much anymore, but it is possible. So basically, we have this ability. I think we're the only automation service that allows unlimited webhooks directly to the browser. This is something we invented a while ago. But basically, it allows you to build an unlimited version of Zapier. We don't try to compete with Zapier though. I don't think that's like our long-term vision. Like it doesn't help our customers faster to rebuild Zapier, right? So we instead now teach our customers just to use Zapier and use these other tools. They just can't do the things that our desktop agents can do. So we just leverage these other tools, kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants, basically, to actually solve the harder problems, the more valuable problems. That was like, we should probably take that off. I apologize. That's like an older marketing thing we had on our website.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly it makes sense that you could build agents that would interact with Zapier. I mean, possibly there are some Zapier use cases that you could replicate, but Zapier is more efficient, maybe.
Yeah, they do. There's some things that Zapier has like exclusive relationships with that helps us, and that there's some designs that help us. But yeah, if you think about it, our desktop agents have access to every open source Python library. So for example, if you ask it to like download a YouTube video or convert this video to MP4 or something, it'll find the Python library, it'll install it, it'll do it for you. So it has a lot of that ability that Zapier already has. And even like I mentioned, like these agents know how to build most of these services already using open source tools. You just kind of have to know how to prompt them to do it now. It's just a little bit friction and there's a little bit of time to do it now, but maybe by next year, they can instantly do it with one phrase. That's like an alignment problem researchers are already working on.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of alignment issues. So how do your agents deal with copyright? Is like you mentioned downloading YouTube videos, and I imagine if you have an agent who has been tasked to, grow an account on TikTok, and you maybe has access to some stock images or video, but there's always a issue of getting flagged for copyright violations or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is like a cat and mouse game, but we train this into our prompts, basically, unlike that second model that I mentioned. So there are certain malicious use cases that we don't allow, and GPT-4 Vision itself doesn't allow. So the models themselves don't allow. So if you try to go to like a website and try to copy it exactly, it'll say, I can't do that, I'm sorry. But if you say that this is something that I want to make something that looks like this, but it's a parody, it will allow that because that's allowed.
So parody, but then I could see like also because ultimately the issue is if you're uploading something to YouTube, it's not whether if I'm uploading a video to YouTube, it's not whether I think it's an infringement of copyright, it's whether YouTube thinks it's an infringement of copyright. And oftentimes, video creators find that a lot of tension there. If you're using assets where the person who sold you the asset says that it's copyright free, and then YouTube is like, surprise, you have a copyright strike or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So before we publish these things, we test them ourselves internally to make sure it works for us and we don't get any issues like that. But we haven't tested everything. So we're kind of like, we take the same stance as OpenAI, where we release these technologies, we allow people to play with them, and then we learn what the policies need to be to make it safe. And so otherwise, we wouldn't really know how to implement these policies. So that's the only reason I know how to do these things at the model level to prevent them. And so I feel like we'll always have this issue where there might be networks that ban us or something like that. But we just have to learn from that mistake, then train it into the model so that customers don't run into this themselves, basically.
Okay. And these agents that are say operating social accounts, I would assume they're optimizing based on just like view counts, engagement, and that kind of thing. So they're like would try different videos or different strategies and repeat what would get the most views or the most engagement.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. So we have a few ways you can set up yourself for your own account. But right now we're launching one-click desktop marketing agents that we run on our accounts, on our servers, on residential IPs. We do everything. So we have like influencer accounts basically that will promote your brand. And they're getting like 600 views at least per video, 18x the CPM of TikTok ads. And we test them like aggressively on these networks before we release them. So for example, we're not releasing a LinkedIn bot because we know they're actually overzealous on these kinds of things. And then we give the idea for A/B testing. So we have two ways of A/B testing basically. So one way we've designed into each one of these agents the ability to look at a profile, look at the history of posts. This isn't exactly A/B testing. It's just like an understanding of what should be highly likely for the next experiment. Like it gives them their next theory or experiment higher success rate. They look at the history of posts and they see what has gotten the most likes, views, and they post something that's an experiment. Then we have the ability to run agents side by side. So you can run multiple agents with different accounts that have something different. So what we recommend doing is taking what you currently have and then testing something different every 2 weeks. And the reason it's 2 weeks is because that allows you to test for statistical significance and minimize biases for any one day. And what happens is after that 2 weeks, say you have two agents, they're on our accounts, but you can go look at them. You can see they're driving 600, 700,000 views or whatever to your business. So one will be better than the other. So by A/B testing every 2 weeks, you should keep the one that's better and then test another one that you think will be a good experiment. But the agent does the testing for you based on whatever profile that or your homepage or whatever's happening in the market itself. So it's kind of like this automated process of A/B testing. It's kind of like what we would do as marketers ourselves, but we're trying to like distill that into an agent that has all this logic and reasoning basically.
And so with those agents are generating leads, I would assume, and so you would have the agents generate leads from different landing pages.
It's not leads. So we have B2B lead generation agents and things like that. These marketing agents are mostly meant for products, for B2C products. So there's AI automation agencies that are using it. There's another SaaS business that's using it. There's a business that does merchant transactions that's using it. So it's like anyone can use it actually. If you're a B2C or B2B business, it can send you leads or it can actually send you customers to sign up and things. And then so like in the previous era of like social automation, what you would usually do is put like a link to your business in your profile and stuff like that. So it's kind of like works like that. We just put the link in the actual post, so it drives traffic to their website.
I see. So like take the business with the merchant automation, like they're trying to reach business owners who would want to reduce their payment processing costs or something, and so they would have to come up with content that appeals to business owners in their area.
No, so the TikTok agent actually generates the whole video. You just have to give it a theme. You have to give, so you can look at the form, I can send you the form. So you just give it a profile to scrape for testing, a theme for the video, and a theme for the caption. It generates the video using DALL-E 3 to generate an image. I can send you the link of if you go to Cheatlayer TikTok, you can see the few users who have been testing it now. And so you can see that it generates an image, turns it into video using stable video. We might change our models to get the most bleeding edge quality, and then that gets a certain number of views. And then so what we recommend doing is if that's not working well, change the profile that you're testing, but it'll automatically test that profile. So if it didn't get views, the next time you schedule it, so every day it schedules. So the next time it schedules, it uses that theme to generate a new video. It'll actually generate a completely new video for you. You don't have to do it. It'll generate the caption. It'll post that, and it'll get a certain number of views. That allows it to basically constantly test itself, because the next day it posts again, it scrapes everything else that happened before, and if the last day was bad, it just picks something that does well. So it kind of has this ability to iterate constantly, slightly better over time. Yeah.
Fast. And does it have a voiceover, or is it just a video and text?
Yeah, you can see it does voiceover, video, and text. We had a little issue with the text being a little not centered. So we're working on making it like those viral videos that are like highlighted with text in the middle and stuff like that. So that's probably the next update we'll do. Right now it just does voiceovers. It generates any video with whatever, you can say whatever you want. It'll generate like a cat dancing, robots dancing, whatever, and then put voiceover on it to sell your business. So that seems to be actually working.
But I guess if you aren't, like that content must be to some degree sort of generic if it's not, I mean, that's the thing, I guess, is like generic content oftentimes might perform very well.
Yeah, so on TikTok, this is interesting. So it's not really generic. It does, like, the users that have tried it, they've had very like kind of specific things. They, for example, there's like a diamond AI agency, and it like draws diamonds on their videos or something. It's like automation centric video. But TikTok does the magic, actually. So it seems like on TikTok, you can post whatever you want. As long as it's a new video and the quality of the video is good, like it looks like a crisp video, TikTok has the metrics to find who's interested in AI agencies, or who's interested in hats. Even if it's like a really simple generic video about hats, it'll put it in front of people who like hats. And so you'll get actually 600 like views and things like that, just on like 20 minutes later, instantly. And that's what happened. So I don't think it's so that's why I think that these agents can actually A/B test themselves without the user even intervening, because they're not A/B testing the truth. They're A/B testing a proxy of the truth. They're A/B testing against the algorithms. We rely on the algorithms to find the truth. I don't think we have the probability. We don't have the possibility. Users don't even have the possibility to figure out at all, I think, what the market wants. Because if you think about it, one person, probability wise, they can't really predict what a market wants, just like you can't predict like what the stock market does. These algorithms and these networks, that's a problem they're trying to solve. We're going to rely on them to solve that because they actually have the data to solve that. We don't have the data to solve that. However, these agents have the ability to A/B test against the algorithms. So they solve for a proxy of the truth, which is what the algorithms want. They want something that's new and good content. And hopefully we have to rely on these networks to, one, not promote like malicious content, and actually find good content over time. That's the trust in the network, basically.
Right, which, yeah, ultimately it's like they care about engagement, is that results in people spending more time on the platforms. So are your bots able to, it sounds like this is basically evergreen content, it's not news content.
Well, that's a good idea. We want to go in that idea. We want to go in that direction. I mean, anything you've done in marketing, we want to build those marketing agents. This just seems like the most valuable to do first.
Right. Yeah, because it's an obvious replacement for paid ads, because people tend to ignore ads anyway. And so if you're posting organic content and getting some actual reach with that organic content, then then that's going to be better for the business and come across as more authentic and everything.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's like on the news angle, it's like I could imagine a bot sort of pulling like RSS feeds or like information from a bunch of websites, and then sort of reprocessing, like repackaging that, or coming out with summaries or takes or different angles on topics it sees in other places. And as long as it's like not directly copying it and isn't saying something terrible that might be useful.
Yeah, and there are other products that do that now. There are like blog generators that look at news feeds and things and generate. These are all like, I think, one-off products. I think all these products will eventually be commoditized eventually in the generalized agent, if you can imagine, right? So we're just making it easy. I think like if you talk to our older customers, they don't really like chatting and things. We have to teach them to chat, but they're used to a simple form like Salesforce because they've known that for decades. So we're making it easy for everyone, and eventually I think these things will be commoditized. Everyone will have this ability to generate these agents, marketing agents, products, and things like that. Yeah. So
you said people don't like to chat. In what sense? In like that people don't have enjoy having a lot of back and forth. They want the AI to read their mind, basically.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So younger audiences seem to really be into chat and like it. But like our older customers, they are all used to forums, but they're mostly the business owners. They're used to like old forums and Salesforce and things like that. And we have to teach them how to chat to get a result and things like that. So I think what is actually easier for most people, even the younger audiences, is to use a form, a simple one-click form to get instant value. And maybe chat is necessary to like derive insights and go deeper beyond that. We'll still have that chat, but the next step seems to be like making it as easy as possible, basically.
To have just like a one shot prompt of like you write a prompt and then
it automates your whole marketing team. Just
automates your entire marketing.
You explain your business, you explain like all your target keywords, all the networks. We can get to that point eventually, basically.
I guess like if you think about that future with the generalized agent, how could people think about risk? I guess it's like if you're if the AIs are talking to your customers and they are selling your products and they are building your software.
Like employees, just like if you hire an employee, you have some risk, right? When you hire someone, they might not always do the right thing. That's how we're training our employee, like our agents, we're training them like employees. So if you go to the agent's dashboard, you can actually edit an agent and say, if a customer says this, say this instead, and then test it, or have your customers test it and email it. If it gets something wrong, teach it. Say, if a customer says this, say this instead. And you try it again, it actually works. So it's like training an employee now, actually. And GPTs kind of teach you this. And we started this maybe a few months earlier than GPTs. You can kind of teach these agents in like a simple language like employees, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, so I could imagine a future where, because I mean, if you think of the AIs as employees, you would have a sort of division of responsibilities among several employees, and then you would have some controls in order to make sure the employees don't cause havoc. And so perhaps there, you'd have a future where you wouldn't want you wouldn't necessarily want only cheat layer AIs. Right. You might want AIs from a number of different companies and then play them against each other somehow.
And have human interaction, deeply human interaction. Like it's not just like a separate team. So we've been building something called human approval and things like that, actually integrate it into your existing business. So there's a no-code option in our desktop editor that allows human approval, where any step of the automation, you can email a human, they can say yes or no to proceed. And if they say no, the automation stops. So that's just the start of it. That's like the beginning, but I think we'll have much more deep integrations with these agents where, like I mentioned, live mode. I really want that. That's been like an interesting problem for me to solve, where I don't have to initiate anything. It'll maybe send me a Slack message. Hey, your server is getting hit. You should go check out a DDoS attack. Or, hey, your usage went down today. Something's wrong. Like, and then I go check that out rather than waking up and figuring it out like later or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's able to bring the problems to you, and having the bot like go to get human approval seems like an important safety feature for a lot of use cases.
I notice customers like also want it for sales automation. They don't want to. They want drafts and things, and so we teach them to test it first, but they still want that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Especially with like sales, if you're dealing with like interactions with a high-profile customer or something, could easily damage a relationship, and so that makes a lot of sense. So cheat layer, you have browser agents, desktop agents, and then you mentioned that cloud desktop agent. What kind of agent are most of your customers on? Would you think most of the customers are using the cloud agents or trying to run them locally, or how does that work?
Yeah, so before we launched on AppSumo, we were doing like direct sales. We had a sales team and all that. And it seems like we were actually selling sales automation. We were automating Apollo.io, and it was working pretty well and getting double the reply rates. And that seems like a big business we could have built. However, what seems to be the focus with product-led growth, and we're growing now, is marketing. That's a much larger market there for the SMB market. Everyone needs marketing. Every business could grow their brand. And we have this much larger opportunity to even grow the SMB market by lowering the barrier to entry. And so it seems to be mostly marketing agents. However, we've learned like after launching, the people that all businesses can derive value from growing their brand on autopilot. Basically, like any business can do this and grow more customers, more traffic, something. It'll help grow their value. However, only a fraction of those businesses are actually interested or even have time or the capacity to go learn another tool, or hire someone to go learn another tool to do something. And just like learning another tool just adds a certain amount of brain fog, and so some people just don't have the ability to do it. So we think like the next obvious step for like helping the majority of our customers, and especially the people that I was trying to help during the pandemic who didn't even have a PC, right? They only could access things on their phone, is to make it a one-click form that someone on their phone could click and then launch a desktop cloud agents leveraging all our most bleeding edge technologies with desktop cloud agents that do all the automations and all of our like understanding and best practices and sales automations with IPs, new accounts, and things like that. They don't have to worry about any of that. It's a one-click form. They grow. And so that I feel like it seems obvious for us. That's like the next step. And then after that, we have some other ideas too. So basically, we feel like if you think about like if you take it to next year, like I mentioned, I think these kinds of AIs will be a commodity. So everyone will basically have a general agent that can do many of the things we can do now. We're just a little bit early. So how do we build for that future? So what we think is going to happen is the market is large enough, and the fact that these AIs will be a commodity will mean that there won't be network effects, which means what will likely happen is the way to compete is to build these personal relationships and build brands and like design, UI design and things like that. So we're enabling a white label solution essentially for agents, any agentic solution that allows you to take a enterprise grade SaaS business, deploy it. If you have CheatLayer Desktop, it can link to your agent that you've built for a specific niche. Not these marketing agents maybe that we've been done. You can sell them if you want, but we think that there's like this entire market of untouched markets, like businesses that haven't been touched by AI that could be solved by agents that are just like really niche and no one really thinks about them, but they're super valuable. They could even make more money than CheatLayer itself actually. And no one even, it's not easy for them to sell it. They don't have the ability to set up these agents, but we've spent all that time like solving it, making it possible to deploy it to the cloud, figuring out how to sell it to people, make it repeatable, like things like that. So I think that's the next step, is to make it easy for people, and then make it easy for people to build businesses on agents.
Fascinating. Yeah, so I could see like CheatLayer can help people build the business that's delivering value, and then also can help them market it and sell it with your marketing automation.
Yeah, like if you think about like we could go after like all the existing businesses that we could help like build and stuff like that. There's very large business, but we have to spend time selling them, and there's a limited number of them, right? However, we think that really the opportunity is much larger of the number of people who haven't built businesses yet, but could build businesses, and that's just the barrier of entry is too large for them. So instead of like going and seeking out existing businesses, we can teach them to go like use our agents live mode. We built our entire agents dashboard using live mode, step by step. We just built it one feature at a time. So we can teach them how to build a product from zero, generate the product using an agent, then use our marketing agents to sell them, and use sales agents if they want to. We can teach them how we got #1 product of the day and things like that. So like basically we have, I think, this opportunity to generate a pipeline of users that want this product. And we don't have to go selling or marketing actually. It'll just grow even faster organically if we build it and make it easy for them actually.
So how did you get a #1 product hunt of the day?
Oh yeah, it took a while. We basically, so to launch a product hunt, there's a few rules you have to understand. So we reached out to like influencers and people who knew product hunt. For example, like Chris Messina, he's like one of the top hunters, and so I like met with him and I got all this insight on how to launch and stuff like that. I met with other marketers who have launched on product hunt, and they basically taught me what to do. And so the main insights behind product hunt is they've designed the site such that if you get votes from new users who aren't product hunt users, it'll penalize your product. So it only works if your product, if current users of product hunt appreciate your product, like your product, and test it. You can't advertise outside the product hunt basically. So in order to do well in product hunt, if you have an existing user base, you should let them know that you're going to launch your product hunt maybe like a month earlier, so they can sign up and know what product hunt is, maybe interact with the community and things like that. Otherwise, if they sign up on the day of, you actually won't do well. You'll lose points and things like that. So that's one of the big things. The other big things are product has a very specific design. It's geared towards indie developers. It's geared towards, they like the story. They like how you built it. So when you build these things, you have to tell them, maybe like you can teach them how you built it, and that'll give them some value. And it also, like, there's this idea behind building in public, and um, uh, this like indie community that's very supportive of people who are willing to share how they got where they are. And so that's kind of like what Product Hunt is built around. If you're like a big company, those don't really seem to even win number one. Even the like huge Google company, Google products, they don't seem to win number one. What seems to win is like these indie products, basically. So if you're bootstrapped, if you don't have any other way of getting customers, this is a good way to get customers, because it seems really based on, or at least it used to. Now it seems like people are gaming it. It really seems to be one way based on merit to get your product in front of a lot of eyes. And so what happened is we had like 5,000 AppSumo users. A few hundred of them were like diehard fans. They helped us get like up into the front page. And if you can get to the front page, if your product is good enough, that will carry you. It'll put you basically in the correct position. That's all you need. So after we got to the front page, that was because we were striking in April. We were probably one of the first like agent automation solutions, like immediately after ChatGPT launched, to go. And so we did pretty well. We got number one there. And then we launched again and got number two like a few months later, but it was harder because we didn't spend basically as much time like preparing our customer base, but we just wanted to like do another launch to establish that what we had built. And I guess like after you launch, there's like a lot of consideration. Like on the launch day itself, there's a bunch of things you can do to help your launch. Make sure you interact and comment on everything and things like that. And throughout the day, you really need to have like multiple engagement points. So we segmented out our email list, and we didn't email our entire email list in one point. We emailed people who were like available like in Europe and India first to get us up in like the boost in the earlier day, and then we emailed our US users later. And so that kind of like gives you regular growth throughout the day to help you maintain that usage. If you get a big bump right at once, it seems like they have algorithms that actually cut you down, so you shouldn't do that. That's one of the things you should worry about. Yeah.
And so, like, did you have to tell people to sort of register for a Product Hunt before you launched? Basically,
yeah, you can do that. Yeah. That's what I learned that from Chris Messina. He's like one of the big hunters on Product Hunt, like one of the number one hunters. He invented the hashtag or something, and like he gave me some of these like tricks and advice that if you sign up on the day of Product Hunt and you upload a product, they actually minus your score. They don't count it. And so it's kind of one of those things, because they figured out over the years that people have been trying to game these, and they still figure out ways to game these because people can sign up and stuff, but they're getting better at it.
And interesting. Yeah, because obviously, like, if you can do well on Product Hunt, you can get a lot of free exposure, and presumably you got a lot of new signups when you were number one at Product Hunt.
Yeah, I don't think we would have done this well if we didn't win number one product of the day in April, because immediately after that launch, like I mentioned, we were doing a sales team before, and we weren't growing organically. But after the launch, our free trial started working with product-led growth. People started signing up to the free trial and signing up organically and things like that. And we got 8K MRR that first month. If we hadn't launched, we'd probably be growing much slower, or hadn't launched and got number one product of the day. Like, what happened is when you get to number one product of the day, Product Hunt, it isn't really important to be number one product, because you can imagine most people don't look at that front page every day. I forget about it. Like, I've known about Product Hunt for years. I don't check it every day, right? What really seems to matter is after you get number one product of the day or anywhere on the front page, they email that whole list to their like millions of subscribers. That's a big boost, actually. So that's basically like paying like thousands of dollars for a big email blast, things like that. So what happened there is influencers now follow that to find all the cool AI products and stuff. So a few of those influencers followed us, and those influencers ended up sharing us. And we got the most traffic from those influencers, especially Future Tools. Future Tools website from Matt Wolf. He ended up making us like a Matt's pick or something, and that got us probably the most traffic, like thousands more than Product Hunt itself. So you don't need to do well on Product Hunt, actually. It's just one way. If you it's a merit-based way. If you have a good product and you're like an indie developer, you can kind of get this boost, and it'll help you out. That's like one way to do it. Like one of the few ways to do it. But if you wanted to, you could just pay like future tools. And if your product is good enough, you should get the same conversion rate, right? If you can pay these networks, these newsletters and stuff like that, it's just as a first step, I wouldn't do that because you want to learn from organic traffic. You want to learn from like those manual customers first. You don't want to spend much on marketing. Because if you try to optimize something that's not an optimized product, then you're going to waste a lot of money and things like that. It's better to actually get your first customers manually and iterate on that.
Right. Yeah. Because like if Matt Wolf didn't like your product, or even if like he does like your product and promotes your product to his viewers, and then you get a bunch of people, and then you're just going to get a bunch of upset people when they decide that it's not very good. So
yeah, and they churn or leave bad reviews and things like that. Yeah. So you kind of have to do everything well, but there's like we've learned kind of like this path that we can teach people, and that's we're gonna like build this course basically. It'll be a free course just to teach people how to launch these SaaS AI tools, because we know kind of like all the tricks. The market actually changes daily, so we've learned a lot of these tricks in the market to do well actually. And without spending, we don't spend any money on Google ads. You can see, you can look at our look us up on SEMrush and stuff like that. We don't really spend. It's all affiliates who are spending money on us.
Interesting. Yeah. So you like you mentioned the market changes all the time. Like what news sources or information sources do you use to keep up to date with the sort of market changes?
VC. Okay, yeah. So this is very hard. So you should be talking to customers and VCs, and you have to be aware of like Twitter. So it's really hard because on Twitter we're noticing like their competitors popping up every day, and I had no idea about that until I got onto Twitter. And so you have to actually be, as like a founder, you have to be vigilant and actually go seeking out, talking to people. And VCs have this unique insight because everyone goes to them. So you can kind of get a lot of distilled insight. If you can get access to some higher up VCs, they can kind of teach you things. So that saves you a little bit of time. That gave me a lot of insight. That was interesting because I learned that the market was really quickly changing, and people were looking for revenue metrics rather than like hype products and things, because interest rates and stuff like that. So we focused on the product, and then that helped us out. Yeah. So for example, like we also, even Product Hunt is something that you should pay attention to. So like when we launched on Product Hunt in April, a week before we launched, ChatGPT launched their API. And before that, we were the only startup on the planet using GPT-3 for automation at all. And suddenly everyone knew about it. They were all doing it. So it changed the conversation. You can imagine it changes the conversation in a period of a week with all of our customers, all of our VCs. We have to explain how we were different with ChatGPT. Now that's happening almost daily. So it's kind of
right. Crazy. Yeah, because lots of other companies are trying to build on the same models, and it's a very, very exciting space. So what AI tools are you using on a daily basis, besides obviously cheat layer?
Live mode. It's the most exciting thing. If you build a product, I highly recommend trying it. You can try it free on our extension. So I've had it do wild things that I would never code myself because it's too tedious. So things, for example, in our Chrome extension, we had it generate an entire file system in the browser to be able to clone GitHub repos. So you can generate a website in the Chrome extension. You can go download our Chrome extension, ask it to generate a landing page for whatever, like a real estate company, and add a functional mortgage calculator or even a 2D game or whatever. It'll generate the whole game. It'll publish it to the internet. We built the system that if you link GitHub and Vercel, it'll clone a file system in the browser, generate the code from a cloned GitHub repo, upload that to a new GitHub repo, and then link that to Vercel. And that's like something that I would have never done before. It's so tedious, right? So these kind of impossible things, I've been using it to generate 100% of the code. The only reason we've been going this fast actually is because we would have probably been like months behind if we hadn't used live mode. It's kind of exciting. I highly recommend using it. If you build products, if you built anything, you can ask it to, what I recommend doing is asking it to generate the most riskiest part of your product first. So for our agents dashboard, I asked it to generate like a project management interface for agents that look like Monday.com. So that's kind of like what looks like kind of like Monday.com. And it did like this table. And then I kept adding features one by one, like adding voice, adding like loading bars, adding a settings menu, and just keep building off of that. And by step, kind of like talking to an engineer, it'll build whatever you want, but 10 times faster than what I would have been able to code. So it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
That is very exciting. But then does it not, like an engineer might have like sort of a higher level understanding of what the architecture would be, because like obviously the live mode doesn't have that understanding. So do you end up running into issues where it like creates dependencies that become unscalable at a certain point, or
Oh yeah, it gets things wrong all the time. It's not perfect. Yeah. So what we do is it's like an iterative process, just like if you were hiring someone to build it, right? So it generates something, and what I recommend doing is just like describing what it generated and what I actually want. And through that process, step by step, we built the entire agent's dashboard. I use it for 100% of our code now because it's just faster. So it does things that I would never do. It's faster. I mean, I still do check it, but the
right.
time that I do to check it is obviously less than me writing the whole thing. So it's definitely worth it. It's really fun when, so for example, we had like a customer who's like in high school, and I didn't expect this, right? So he started using the tool. I didn't expect the kids to start using this and stuff. He built like a bingo game that actually spoke like the numbers back to you, and I had no idea we had the ability to speak back to you without 11 labs. He figured it out just by typing a prompt. So these kinds of things, users are actually discovering that we never expected in simple language, because the model itself has access to more than I know, actually. So
Right. Yeah. These models have access to huge amounts of information, and I guess the danger is if you don't have enough knowledge to be able to check the output or understand what is happening.
Yeah, that's a problem. So sometimes it'll go completely off the rails, and we have to teach users how to solve these problems. But the way we're solving it, I mentioned this, what we think is the path to the holy grail is something called the testing loop. So like I mentioned, we're segmenting things to make it easier to test, and these models still fail, and we don't want users to have to go figure out how to debug that code. So like basically what we're doing is we're having the testing loop emulate everything I do. So for example, what it does now, it's a very simple testing loop. If there's an error or syntax or runtime error, it just tells it to regenerate. In our research, like in our design path, we're doing next is we're going to have it do the same thing I do, where I go to GitHub, Stack Overflow, and regenerate like multiple solutions of these things, basically. And if we get to the point of these segmented logical blocks, we can actually generate all the solutions in parallel, test them and things. So we have a path actually to do this in such a way that like I was the agent. We're basically trying to rebuild a software engineer to act like your personal agent. So I don't think it's impossible, actually. I think just someone has to go through the tedious work of like figuring out all these modalities of how to solve these edge cases and research. But if you think about it, like it's not an infinite number of modalities. You can train a software engineer maybe in like a year to solve these problems. So in that same way, we have to train these agents to solve these problems.
Right, and be able to debug the
like dependency issues and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the testing loop does sound like yeah, I mean that would be amazing. Like, yeah, if we can get to a point where the AIs can identify and solve the problems that they encounter, as it'll be a amazing new world, I guess we'll be in a few years.
I think next year, and like intuitively, it feels like it should be possible because the model can do more than I can do. Like right now, it can already generate better code, like more sophisticated, faster code than I can do. And the only thing it's missing is like my intuition of going to Stack Overflow and GitHub. That's something we can teach it actually. So intuitively, it feels like it should be possible. We just haven't taken those steps yet, actually.
Right. And yeah, it does. Like it seems like to some degree the bottleneck is in like humans need to be able to trust that the AIs can do these things, and it probably takes, in some cases, like humans time to build up that trust and understand what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, is very an exciting future of things that will be possible with Cheat Layer and Atlas. I assume Atlas 2 at some point.
Yeah, eventually. We're training a new version actually because we got a lot of usage data, and there's, for example, like modern designs. We trained Atlas 1 on like old data sets of UI, but they don't include the latest modern designs and some. So it still like misses some buttons and things. So we do need to release an Atlas 2.
Yeah. Designs changing all the time, but as you said, it seems like it should be possible, as there are only so many, yeah, I guess possible ways people have of designing things.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you can, and then there's a lot of value out there to be captured. So if people want to get started on CheatLayer, I know you have plans from $49 a month, and you have some kind of trial that people can use.
Oh no, it's a completely free version without a time limit. Like I mentioned, like the original vision of CheatLayer was to start the business to help these people actually. And so we figured that if we did grow large, we could use the profits to subsidize usage for free users. So over time, we've been reducing the task consumption of automations to be as cheap as possible for free users. So free users get access, unlimited access, every month tasks reset. So this allows them a path to build a product, market it, and then once they get like customers, then they can pay us.
If you enjoy this, you should sign up to our free newsletter, 3600. In our newsletter, we have valuable content that goes beyond what's available in our videos, links to free tools, resources, and all kinds of awesome stuff. You should head over to our website, join3600.com, to sign up today.